My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is July 13, 2022. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with John Melville Bishop. John, how in the heck are you?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. I've gone through many hoops over the years, and I'm still standing.
I love it. Hoops is a good word. And where are you calling in from?
I'm in Portland, Oregon. I moved up here, um, oh, 10, 12 years ago.
The first question is, what's the best thing for a human being?
What, break even?
Break even. I never got that answer. That is good. Break even. I can relate to that philosophy. John, what's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Well, I personally like to get it in conversation because if I get an interesting, some interesting idea and toss it around, then I can look things up and groom it and whatever. But getting a fresh idea often comes from talking with people.
I agree completely. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
It's just a big conspiracy.
Well,
it's hard to know. Would we be better off if we didn't have? I'm one of those people that I will study anything. I will do field work on anything, make a film about anything, because I think everything is to be understood. Whereas there's now a big backlash against folklorists and anthropologists and sociologists for well, I didn't give you permission to think about me and my culture.
Yeah. Do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
The way we do it now is pretty invented, but people always had to figure things out, make models, and cogitate on where they're going to get food, where it's safe, pay attention to the seasons, things like that.
Do thoughts create emotions?
Mine do.
Good. You get it. All these questions you put into the context you want. Okay. The next one is, I don't know what I think until I fill in the blank.
Well, in my work, I don't know what I'm doing until I start shooting or interviewing or whatever. So I try not to have a lot of preconceived ideas. What was that? I look at myself more as a witness, Everything I've done, whether it's the photographs or things I've written and the films, they're all a witness to the time and state of, and cultural moment that we were in. And now, of course, the world's gone to hell in a handbasket. So,
yeah. Can humans think without language?
Now, that's a really tricky question because we aren't sure exactly what thinking is, and I do meditations, and they're not official or anything, where I try to actually turn off language so I can be sitting and just seeing the trees, just hearing the sounds without letting words come in. I'm not thinking, oh, what a wonderful tree, look at the way it shakes. No, it's just, it's, and I think that's turning off thinking in a way.
Yeah.
Consciousness, sentience is still there, but it's, thinking is very active comparatively.
Yeah. Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. I go, good luck. Like, To turn off your thinking brain is a hard thing. Like, this is a stupid question, but it's basically, are humans more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
I think they're more feeling. It seems it seems like you're thinking all the time, but the real engine is feelings and what is it? Sympathetic nervous system.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. So Chomsky says a language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. John, what do you do when language doesn't work, when language breaks down?
Well, in Tibet, there was a story of Long Dharma, who was a really evil demonic demon. He had a big old knot on his head, which he covered up with having it dressed over, and he had to kill he got a virgin to dress his head every day, and then killed her and got another one for the next day. He's really a pretty bad guy, and Long Dharma, it was the demon's name, and a monk, I don't remember his name, Pal Dorje. He took his white horse and put black coal dust on it, and he didn't know where to find Long Dharma, but one of the girls was weeping and crying and please let me go. He said, well, as long as you don't tell about me, I'll let you go. So she went down and there was a stream and she couldn't hold it in any longer. So she whispered into the stream, Long Dharma's got a meat horn. And the stream picked it up automatically and, it's Long Dharma's got a meat horn. And that was picked up by some reeds that grew up. And then a shepherd came by a few years later and cut one of the reeds and made a flute. And all they could do was sing Long Dharma's got a meat horn, and spread all over. And then Pal Dorje, who was the good monk, he knew he couldn't get close to Long Dharma, so he painted his white horse black and disguised himself and got his bow and arrow. And he rode up and shot the demon, and then went under a waterfall and it washed the horse clean. And he got away. The other demons couldn't find him. See, that's the thing. You just carry a lot of stories after a while.
Well, no, you answered a question with a story. This is all about anecdotes, stories, inventing new metaphors, new questions. That was beautiful. I really learned a lot from that. So these are two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. First one is thinking a function of the soul?
Ooh, that's a hard one because I don't believe that you actually are in touch with the soul. I don't expect to go to heaven or hell. I'm resigned to going out of existence suddenly. And I think of the soul more as an empathetic sort of karmic thing. Are you doing good for people or doing bad for people? Am I grateful enough for the things that have been given to me? Am I empathetic enough with
That's
I fall quite short though.
No, that was really beautiful. I like that. I try to practice that. The second Turing question, John, is can machines think?
If they don't now, I think they soon will. There was a story in Playboy back in about 1962, a very short science fiction piece, and suddenly all communication stopped in the world, and the electric company, there's no power. And this went on, for like 6 hours, and then suddenly everything came back. And what was postulated was that the telephone system, with all its connected nodes, had suddenly gotten sentience, and that was the baby waking up and crying for the first time.
Ah, that sounds like a Samuel Beckett play.
It could be.
Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
For me, it's meaning. The happiness, I don't go out looking for a lot of pleasure, a lot of happiness and stuff. I mean, I'd like to be in the tumble of things. And when something really good happens and you really appreciate it, it's not like an entitlement. It's nice if you have it all the time, but
yeah. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we actually creating it?
I think I'm not really sure. It's a matrix of nodal matrix that's going on. I'm not sure it has any existence or identity separate from myself. I mean, I'm it, and it defines me. And if I didn't have it, it wouldn't be. It's kind of a backwards answer.
No, that's good. I like, who's that? One of those great philosophers said, we walk forward, but in order to understand things, we got to go backwards. So that was good. I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's true.
What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Speed of light, I'm afraid.
Audre Lorde said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer said you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Well, going back to a notebook and a pencil, because even though all the technology I have, basically to get a good idea and get the core, it's often circling around it on pencil and paper.
That's me right now. Look at all these notes
Look at that. Yeah.
Started. I agree with you. What new toy do you suggest?
Well, I have a bunch of them that I was delighted to get that I don't use. Like I have where am I now? Okay, let's say this is a camera and it's on a gimbal, so I can walk along and talk and the camera doesn't wiggle all over. And I have absolutely no use for it. And I have a little toy helicopter. Well, it's a real helicopter, not an expensive one that will take pictures as I smash it into trees. So what was that about? I mean, they're technological toys and tools. I mean, one of the great pleasures of living in this age.
Yeah. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Well, I think about my children and grandchildren, and how what are their lives going to what context are their lives going to grow in?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Feel free to change the verbs because I've often thought of changing the verb in that question to what do you think about? but someone advised me, leave it. What do you worry about? That's
Mhm.
Errol Morris asked Rumsfeld that question. So I hijacked it from Errol Morris. Marcia McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound, the poet, that artists are the antenna of the race. And by artists, he means painters, filmmakers, poets, musicians, etc. That artists are broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so that we can learn to cope with what we don't like about them.
Mhm.
So I'm going to ask you, John, the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though artists are broadcasting them to us?
I think most people are unaware of these things. They've become context and background.
Yeah.
The idea that what a book. Well, I realized when the first little digital cameras, movie cameras, came out, along with a really simple to use editing system. I mean, people couldn't believe we even made films and video productions at all. Why would we bother until the technology came?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So, do artists have moral obligation?
I think only in the sense that they should um, be telling the truth. Like a commercial artist selling cigarettes or whatever. You can make a great campaign and great visuals like the Marlboro Man. But and that's not for the good of anything. But some when artists are actually expressing something, they're usually for the good.
Well,
That's what they want to do. Right?
yeah. Well, Louis Buñuel said, "I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it." Any comment?
Yes, I think actually the whole idea of having the truth is. I had a student once who was very postmodern, and I had just given a talk in which I alluded to what's true and isn't, and what's true. And she was postmodernist and took great, whatever the word is, with me. And said, how could you possibly say truth? There is no truth.
Wow.
It's all construction.
Well, it's funny because the cliche is that the journey is more important than the destination. Why do we have to seek a destination or even name a destination if the journey's more important?
Well, you got to buy the airline tickets and steps to actually get somewhere. So, but I agree. If you have enough opinion and knowledge to know where you want to go, that's one way. It's good. It confirms ideas and stuff. Going and finding something completely different than you expect is more interesting.
Well, you must have ESP, John, because you said the word ideas. The next question is, are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Well, given the things like the Supreme Court and all, I think the old ideas are the real danger.
Hello.
Yeah.
How did that happen? So, John, can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Well, I do remember, and I have to have been 2 years old, so that's pretty. Man, we were visiting my father's parents in Chicago, And they had a single piece linoleum floor in the back, but it was kind of curled up, and I got a broom. I was only 2 years old. The stickers on it started peeling on the linoleum off. It was not appreciated, my curiosity, I suppose, but not the.
Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
I think it's a blessing. I mean, I do a lot of writing based on memory, and a lot of it isn't happy, pleasant, puts me in the best lights. But I'm not afraid of looking at things that have happened in the past and realizing that things were unfair. I wasn't acting very well. I have a sister. You really want to go into this?
If you want, it's your choice, whatever.
Everyone has great moral twists and turns in their life.
Yeah.
When I was 10, I was the first of 3 boys, and then a little girl came along, and then another boy after that. But she had cerebral palsy, very, very severe, and we were living in Europe, and my father's with the Public Health Service, and he had to give up his commission, and the family had to move back to the States, and we took care of her till she was about 12 or 13. She would sleep in my room on a trundle bed, and whenever she stirred in the night, my arm would just reach out and pat her or hold her hand or whatever. And then the family fell apart on a number of things. My father left, and we were living way out in Armonk, which is in the exurbs of New York. And there was nothing for my mother to do, in terms of a job. And I was graduating high school and had no idea where I was going to go to school. I'd go to community college because there's no money. And then an old friend of my parents came by and said, "Oh, look, John can go to Berkeley. You can all move to California." And it seemed really a great idea, which we did. I don't know how I got into Berkeley, except that I was doing well in math in high school, and I applied as a math major. If I'd applied as an English major, I probably wouldn't have gotten in. And so my whole family came out to Berkeley, and we left my sister behind at a state facility, Willowbrook, which is, if you Google it, it's one of the great social tragedies and crimes of all time. And we abandoned her, and then life was very complicated and doing a lot of things. And when I was in my 40s, I went to see her a few times, but she was a ghost-like person, and I was I had just moved to LA and was trying to process not being on the East Coast and finding I didn't have a job, and so it was kind of a tumultuous time. And I suddenly realized that there was that Mary Beth was a bit of unfinished business for me. And so I called my father. He didn't know where she was. And I knew my mother didn't know. So I called a couple of places where I knew she'd been and got to a social worker. And the social worker said, I can't just give you information. I mean, I don't know who you are. I can't even tell you about Sunmount in upstate New York. And I said, "Thanks a lot." She gave me a gift, She, just out of the goodness of her heart, and so I called Sunmount and I said, "Do you have a Mary Elizabeth Bishop there?" He said, "No, I don't think so." "Oh, you don't mean Mary Beth, do you?" I said, "That's probably her." So I didn't call my mother. I flew up to Berkeley and told her what I had done and that I was going to go see her, and she wanted to come too. And so we brought her back into the family, up to a point, But
that was an amazing story, John. It really covered the next question, so I'll just skip to this one. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
my father was I don't. My father was sort of iffy. My mother was Roman Catholic, Irish, and I sort of went along with it. I mean, there were times in my life when I was just gung ho. I didn't want to go to hell for one thing. Do a few Hail Marys if I have to get out of that one. But one day I think I was a senior in high school. I was riding the school bus in the fall, and the lights of the sun, the low setting sun, was dappling through the leaves. And one of my friend's father was an advertising man, and he had a questionnaire of things like, "What's your favorite football team? What's your favorite color? Blah, blah, blah. Do you believe in God?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And he said, "Why?" And it's like a ray of sunshine and energy came into my head, and a mountain of shit sloughed off my shoulders. It was the most profound thing. I mean, if Jesus came on the bus himself, and sat down next to me, it wouldn't be as big as this. And
so you had what James Joyce called an epiphany because he asked you a question.
Mm-hmm. And later, 30 years later, I every now and then I think of someone from the past and I find their phone number and call them. It usually takes them quite a bit by surprise. But I talked with him. I said, I owe you a great debt. And I told him the story. And said, that's not a conversion that I'm particularly happy about. I'm an Episcopal minister now.
Well, that was the next question. You anticipated all these questions beautifully, John. Is now do you pray? Because you said I say a few Hail Marys. Do you pray now?
No, I don't expect anything. There might be. I'm not. I don't say that there aren't other parts of reality that I'm not cognizant of. But I don't pray. I hope.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. If God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
What a trip that was.
Dude,
well, I can tell you, every Super Bowl Sunday, Jesus brings a six-pack over and we watch the game together because he gets so sick and tired of, "Oh, Jesus, if we could just make a second touchdown, then I have to pay my debts, my bank, my bets off, and otherwise I'll lose the house and everything."
That's one of my favorite Paul Krasner jokes. I don't know where I learned this, but the guy, no, it's Krasner. The little boys at the little league baseball game, and he says, "Please God, let me hit a home run." And the pitcher goes, "Please God, let me strike him out." And the clouds part, and God's voice, "Soup is fools." Then the other one is the guy's hanging on the edge of a cliff, and he's gonna fall, and he goes, "Help, help, is there anyone who can help me?" And God's voice comes through the clouds, and he goes, "I'm God, I can help you, let go and I'll save you." And the guy goes, "Is there anyone else who can help me?" John, do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I think it's. I don't think evil is a thing. It's not an infectious agent, but it's. I think people get to be evil by losing track of other things. something bad goes with some bad things happen. They get a chance to do a little cheating, whatever. And I don't think there are that many truly evil people. They're unpleasant people. But,
Yeah.
the Hitlers and, there's some evil people. No doubt about it. I mean, the rape of Nanking, that was done by evil people.
Yep. Well, this question really is deeper in that it's how do you, John, advise someone to deal with an enemy? I'll set up with a few modern thinkers' thoughts. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. Fellini says, I need an enemy. It's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. But you better know who your enemies are. You forgot one. Lyndon Johnson said of J. Edgar Hoover, I'd rather have him inside the tent pissing out than outside the tent pissing in.
Yeah. I know I left a lot of them out. One of my favorites is, how about Walt Whitman? I no doubt deserve my enemies. But I love Ram Dass. He says, I'm having a real hard time loving George Bush. It's like fill in the blank. I'm having a real hard time loving Putin or whoever.
Yeah. It's just one of the burdens of the modern age.
Yeah. So James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building to see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, they can, movies and theater and concerts, they can take you to different places than you'd ever be able to do yourself. It allows you to be transported for a while in a reality that you can't manage. Like I can't, I play a little guitar and sing, but if I want music, I have to go hear real musicians, and films make moral arguments, and they're in books and novels and things. Someone told me that novels are a way people learn. How did he put it? Like how you learn the way the other classes live, and it's kind of a gentle guidebook to many vagaries that life has.
Yeah, Warhol says we learned everything from the movies. We learned how to drive a car, how to kiss, and it's, Ronald Reagan got to the White House and he said, where's the war room? And they goes, there's no war room. And he says, well, I saw it in Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove. And, it's not that stupid because Kubrick is a stickler for details. But, anyways, it's funny what you just said. I mean, it's amazing what you just said, but I'm curious if you started to walk us through this and it was really good. How did you get to your career, like the tipping point? So you go to Berkeley because you were a math major. When did you kick over to studying anthropology? What was the tipping point? And then when was the tipping point to be a filmmaker?
Well, when I got to Berkeley, which was full of real mathematicians, I quickly realized that I had no sense of how to do it. I mean, I could understand other people's mathematics if I tried really hard, but I wasn't going to be able to be productive in that area. And I tried physics a little bit, because I really have a great curiosity about how things work. I mean, I was just overjoyed when I took a physics class in high school and learned why how you could derive the formulas from an experiment, or make an experiment to see if the equation works. That was an important moment for me for time. Then I got into philosophy and ended up being a philosophy major. And I had a tremendous love of poetry. And that I never could. I wrote poetry, but I wasn't. I've known many poets, and I'm not like them. I just don't have the mindset to sit down and write verse. But I mean, right now I have Dylan Thomas, T.S. Eliot, and Allen Ginsberg complete works sitting on the table next to where I drink my coffee in the morning, and I'll open them at random. And I do most of the ones I don't know, but every once in a while you find a gem there.
That's good, but I want to go into poetry in a second. But then after philosophy, was there a point where you said, now, how did you kick over into anthropology?
Well, there was this girl in my comparative literature class with long blonde hair, hand-smocked dresses, sandals, custom-made sandals, and she looked very haughty. And we kept running into each other at the Jack London Square core picket lines. It was a weekly thing. And so I asked her to go to a Bob Dylan concert, and that was good. And then she said, I can't hang out with you. I have to rehearse with my sister. And I was like, can I come along? She says, oh, no. But I did go along. And they picked up their guitars and started playing different things on each guitar and singing in harmony. And I'd never heard anything like it outside of stuff that had been studio recorded and mixed. And it was, we got closer and closer. And then I met her mother, who was Bess Hawes, the folklorist who as her mother. And soon after that, I met Alan Lomax, and I loved music, but I didn't know how it worked. Not just the technical, what a scale is and stuff, but why is it that you can convey such emotion and feeling and narrative, through purely abstract music? And when I met Alan Lomax, he was working on cantometrics, which is a measure of the performance style of songs, not the text, not the mechanical melodies, but what are the aspects of the style? Like, is there a soloist? Is there a soloist with a chorus that answers? Is there a band? That kind of thing. And then, is the voice open or strained? Is it pretty clear, or is it embellished with glissando and stuff like that? And that opened up a whole idea about music, understanding of music as a performance, not just as a body of text and and rules.
Amazing, John. Let's stay on the music for a second. But once you met Beth and then you met Alan, when were you gravitating towards film? Did you go, okay, you could be the cameraman and just do this? Or did you say, hey, I can be the cameraman, or I'm going to go take film classes. What's the tipping point into that was your you walked us through getting to anthropological studies of music. How did you get that crossover into actually being the filmmaker?
Well, in high school, I thought of myself as Fellini. I liked that gritty black and white Italian neorealism.
Yeah.
Thought of myself as suave, as Marcello Mastroianni. We all have our delusions.
Yeah.
Um, but Alan then went into studying the performance style parameters of dance. For example, are the feet always on the ground, like in the Pacific Islands? It's like there's suction cup to the ground, and then in American Indians, it's a step, 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 and that's just the feet. And what happens with the hands, and is the one of the big ones is if you're like an Irish step dancer, the body is rigid and the feet are going, but they're going. And if in an African dance, every plane of the body is synchronized with playing a physical music of itself. I mean, that's one big contrast. And he was, of course, using ethnographic film for analysis. And at the same time, anthropology in general is starting to look at film as a serious research tool with the Juntwa Bushmen and the Yanomamo projects, and Bird Whistle was. Do you know Raymond Birdwhistle?
Yes, I've I know about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, his film analysis stuff was big, and I was getting immersed in it, partly because Alan was so deeply into it, and and I didn't really want to get into film because you had to spend all your time trying to get a little money together to make a little film. It was like $800 to $1,000 per minute to make a 16-millimeter film. So I didn't really. I spent a lot of time working on photography, and both technically and aesthetically, and I think I'm pretty good.
Well, you're really good filmmaker too. But so basically, are you a self-taught filmmaker?
Oh yeah, I never took any classes.
And then you're a self-taught photographer too?
Mm-hmm. Wow. And later, I mean, I didn't realize this, but Adelaide de Menil was Ted Carpenter's wife.
Yeah.
They had this 40-acre estate on the Atlantic Ocean in East Hampton, and they had built a whole little complex of antique buildings that they had trucked to the site and restored. And then I was out there one day, and Ted said they had sold the estate and that they were going to move the buildings to become the new town hall of East Hampton. And I said, hey, that's really good. and so Addie asked me if I would make a film about the estate as it was, and then and then the moving of the buildings. And I didn't say no. And she's going to pay for it too. It wasn't like I was having to put anything in other than doing what the part I know how to do.
Right.
And so we were there. I had this beautiful set of rails. They were titanium rails about that telescope, and I went about 18 feet with little dolly wheels, so I could put that in and dolly around. So, yeah, I was having a great time. Naomi asked, "Do you know what you're doing?" My wife asked, "What do you know what you're actually doing?" I said, "Not really, um, but I have to get all this stuff." But so what are you going to do with it? He said, "Can you make a film with it?" And I said, "Of course. If I shoot it, I can make a film of it." But no one had ever asked me that question before. And it turned out to be a pretty good film. The Further Lane one.
I think these big turning points or tipping points I'm asking for come from these people asking you questions, and then you have these epiphanies, and yeah. But let's stay on music for a second. It's interesting because a friend of mine says the three tenets of music are technique, theory, and taste. So technique, you learn how to do it. Theory is you know what chords you're playing. How does one acquire taste in music?
I mean, I wouldn't call myself a person who has taste in music. I mean, there are genres that I really like and know about, but
I mean, how did you form an aesthetic to gravitate towards certain types of music? I mean, did your film a place for jazz be, happen because you loved that setting, that bar, 1369 Jazz Club, or because you love jazz, or because someone just gave you a bunch of money and said, "Here, make a jazz documentary"?
no, a filmmaker I've worked with quite a bit in Boston liked me for my camera work, and so we went. I was doing a film for him, and two of the characters lived across the street from the 1369, and it was all snow and slush out, and I filmed them saying whatever they were saying when they walked out the door, and hung the camera out the window as they walked across the street in the snow, and then I ran out and got them coming into the bar. And then we got into the bar, and these two Hell's Angels type guys were standing there, and the owner said, "These guys want to go down in the basement with you. They have a..." And so we went down to the basement. The camera cost $30,000 with the lens and everything. It's not. You used to be able to buy a house for that.
Yeah.
And so we went down and had a little discussion, and I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll take. You're only in this one role. I'll take it out." And I broke the film because I'd only used half the roll, and it costs $100 a roll. So I said, "Here it is." And I said, "Oh, thanks, man." And the other side, So I had to give them the fresh, the other 200 feet. And, I don't know why I got off on that,
but basically you formed an aesthetic. You like jazz.
Yeah, I didn't know terribly much about it. I mean,
but how do you gravitate towards it? You liked Bob Dylan enough to go to a concert. You liked jazz to make a film. You liked the working with Alan Lomax. How does one acquire taste in music? Like what you gravitate towards?
Well, I started, listening to a lot of white people singing the blues because I could understand the lyrics better because they enunciated the way I enunciate. Now I can't do that anymore. I've crossed the river, and I don't consider myself a connoisseur of music at all. I was in my 40s before I started learning anything about classical music. And I have a friend in Los Angeles who is a composer, and he has a youth orchestra that he just took to Carnegie Hall, and he gave me a list of things that I should listen to, and so I bought the CDs, and then I videotaped some of his lectures and things. He was a good scholar of music as well as a composer, very good pianist. And so I learned a lot about that. I learned a lot about blues and American traditional music from Alan and Bess.
Well, I think basically what you're saying is exposure. How did you form taste is through exposure, being exposed to these different sounds. But it's interesting because you of all people, you probably could weigh in on this McLuhan quote. Song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference. Any
Yeah,
comment?
I think that's right. Language and the the structural aspects of language, or the performance aspects of language, are mirrored in music and movement. Yeah.
What's more fundamental, language or music?
Ted Carpenter and I had a discussion about that. He feels that movement came before music, and I think, and this was we were talking about Alan's work, and Alan had weighed in on this point, but I don't remember. I think Alan also said that movement is more fundamental than the music.
Meaning like dance came before music. Is that what you're basically saying?
Yeah. Although it's like saying a bicycle and a car. You know? they get you to the same place, but they're very different. And both music and dance go way back.
Well, it's interesting because Augusto Powell and Paulo Freire, the theater of the oppressed, they say the first human invention was theater. I've studied this for years. It could have been lying. It could have been a tool. We don't know what the first human invention is, but theater is sort of all encompassing. So the next question is, what was the motive of the cave artist? In reality, we don't have cave dance and cave music per se. We can imagine it. You see Herzog's film, and he has the guy play the little flute they found, but it doesn't mean they played it the way this guy's playing it.
Yeah.
And we don't have movies of cave dance. But just in general, your philosophy, when I say, or your hunch, not what anthropologists say, but you, John Bishop's hunch, what was the motive of the cave artist, meaning cave dance, cave painting, and cave music?
I often think about that. What it was like, having sex, eating. Is it was communal eating? Was it whatever you can gather for yourself and whoever you're beholden to? And there were a lot of different peoples. The cave people are just in the Dordogne area in Spain. Well, not really, there were a lot, but other early humans were on the African belt. But I've lost the thread.
What was the motive of the cave artist?
I had an idea. Well, there's always, they say that the bison and stuff, that's the animals they hunt, and it could be they're worshiping, it could be keeping it. I went, we took a trip to the center and south of France and went through the Dordogne and went to about 5 or 6 cave sites, including going, way down and getting into the bigger chambers. It's amazing that anyone could get in there, and with a little oil or fat in a clamshell, do these beautiful paintings, and if you shook the light, you could see them almost animated. It's a multi-dimensional thing. But I have no idea what was on their mind. That's the one thing. If I had a time machine, that's where I'd go. And,
Wow.
you know,
Well, it's funny because a screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process when you're writing a poem or making a film?
well, when I'm writing, it's really what idea am I trying to express, and often takes a little struggle to get there. Making a film, I consider myself, in a large sense, as a witness.
Yeah.
That's what my life has been. I get dropped into things that nobody is entitled to such wonders, and I just, there was we in Mississippi. We'd had a really bad day, and I don't remember what happened, but Alan was really pissed, and so was the cameraman. The other cameraman from Mississippi, he was upset. And now, where was I going? I'm also getting old.
Yeah, that's all right. It will come back to you. But John, and then this is truly enlightening. I appreciate you talking with me. Is Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much do you think of your audience when you're writing? You thinking of your reader or your viewer when you're making your film?
I think only about if I'm getting it right.
Yeah.
And and I have a certain aesthetic sense that helps me out. I think as a camera person, people think I'm a nice person, and they'll tell me stuff. They'll trust me to, to set them up right. I'm not going to make them look ugly. I'm not going to do anything that would. I let them go wherever they want to go, but I'm not going to steer them into revealing something they don't want to reveal. And it shows. It shows in the footage I've shot for other people.
It does show. It's it's that dilemma that all viewers ask documentarians is how do you find trust in your subject? But I'm curious. McLuhan says that everything we invent extends some humanness or human sensorium. So, knife and fork extend our teeth. The eyelid is an extension, is extended by the shutter in a camera or the projector. And even non-tangible philosophy or religion maybe is an extension of consciousness.
Yeah.
The two things I'd like to know, what does the pen, because you originally said this earlier, the pencil and paper, what does the pencil extend for you? What humanness? And then what does the camera, the moving image camera, extend for you? What?
Yeah. Well, the pen and pencil, the pen and pencil is a way to get something on paper or on your iPad.
Yeah.
I like to draw and stuff. I don't try and be good at everything, but I like to try my hand at a lot of things. But what about the camera? I happen to have a note. Yeah. I was thinking of writing some stuff about filming, and the camera was so nice. It was beautifully designed so it would fit on this little cutout to hit on your shoulder. There was a very quiet sound that you could hear the film moving through the magazine because it was right against your ear. And it was almost a religious ritual. I get into the place and open the three boxes and put up the tripod and put the lens on the camera and the magazine on. And it was very satisfying material tools to work with. I mean, they're really high precision, and
That's good, John. You know what you really evoked there was most people will say, well, the camera extends your eye, but McLuhan said the moving image camera extends your foot because you're traveling. And of all places, of all cameramen, you've traveled. But Barbara Hammer, there's a movie you got to see called Beyond the Bolex. This woman's have you seen it? This woman's grandfather invented the Bolex, and she made an amazing movie on him. And she interviewed Barbara Hammer, and she says the camera is an extension of my shoulder.
Yeah.
And
you don't even have to articulate it. It just gets on your shoulder, and even the ones that aren't very well balanced, you still become one.
Yeah, it's like you really got me thinking because Jean Rouch, the great French theorist and documentarian, says when I put a camera between me and you, it's more real than if there's no camera there. Now, most people say that's not true. But the other one you really brought up a couple minutes ago for me was McLuhan's line, the Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
So the next question, John, is what's more important, conviction or compromise?
Conviction can be so off-putting, when it's other people's conviction. And well, I don't mind compromise as long as it's not undercutting, some important structural element. I'm not wealthy enough not to compromise.
Yeah. Is ambition based more on fear or joy?
I would say the promise of joy.
Yeah.
I was talking with a psychologist, and she said you have a very high tolerance for risk, which I never put my body in danger. Like go through a raging stream without, but I don't. It doesn't bother me to walk into a room full of people and start making conversation with them. I never feel embarrassed about filming a person, because if I look like is this okay? Then they're going to feel the same. You have to. It's not putting on a fake thing. You have to sincerely, kind of easily let them know that you kind of like their being with them, and
I saw Pennebaker speak at UCLA a few years ago, and he says, we never ask permission and we never have anyone sign anything. And Chris Hedges, his partner, hits him and says, you can't say that anymore. But this question goes into what Michael Apted told me. He made 28 and Up and all these films. He made a documentary on a Russian rock star years ago. 40 years ago, I asked him, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? Most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922, but it really flourished in 80s because of MTV, to the point where Marty Scorsese says, I cut my films faster because of MTV. So Michael Apted said, well, we've learned to take in information faster. So I asked this question with a bias. Can we learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
I think we're just brainwashed to believe we can. Pacing in the film, you know Les Blank's films, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. He always somewhere he gets in the cutaway, like I'm going home, and the sun is setting in golden hour. They're racing through the bayous, and and you see the shacks, and then the bayou, and then the plowing, and he had another cutaway of it lasted like 2 minutes. A little piece of driftwood going down a very slow stream, and he just followed it. I mean, yeah. That's the other thing that people, when you're working for someone, and they want you to do what you need, but they don't want you to spend any time doing cutaways, or if you're shooting in Kansas, you better get some pictures that look like canvas. So if you're in New York, you got to show New York, and it takes time. You have to put time aside to do it. And they think they're getting me for half a day.
Yeah.
And so after 7 hours, they're still only on that half a day.
That was a great observation about Les Blank. I mean, his Wild Chapatula's films are, he did that. That's amazing filmmaking. And you have elements in your films that remind me of him. But I'm curious, the real hidden question in the last one was, is it literally possible for humans to multitask?
I think that you can do physical you can be sorting something visually with your hands and attending to something else mentally. But I think multitasking is really switching back and forth, not doing two things at the same time.
Yeah. T.S. Eliot said poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Well, sometimes I think in French. Now, I don't speak French very well, but I learned it when I was 8 years old, and there's a different logic to the way French discourses and the cadences and all. So sometimes if I want a particular kind of like reading the French essay, if I want to get that feeling, I often slip into partial French.
Two of my film heroes talk about, George Manupelli says his mantra is ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says there is no self-expression. And the great jazz pianist Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Mm-hmm. It's a stupid question. I know it's both, but just your feelings. Is art making more self-expression or more your vehicle for whatever technology, culture, and environments are dominant?
I think the word artist has become blown way out of proportion. Anyone can call themselves an artist, and I had a friend. She was a student, and she did an art piece where she drank different colors of Kool-Aid, wearing a jacket, a raincoat of the same color, and then she'd barf into the bowls. Okay, so she's an artist.
Well, that's Warhol and McLuhan both said art is anything you can get away with. And I told that to the great jazz collector, and he goes, "That sounds like Trump." I was like,
multi-genre creation.
Yeah. But John, really the hidden question here is, can art making be egoless?
I don't think so. I mean, even when I'm not doing it for, building myself up. If I do something nice, I can.
Yeah.
So there's a feeling of satisfaction when you come up with a good idea and everything works. Like in filming, I studied Jean Rouche's camera style and John Marshall's and other filmmakers who I thought were very accurate, but also quite poetic in the way they could do it. And where was I going?
Well, you studied their ways of filming, but then you're saying you developed your own, because they often say you absorb your influence and then you abandon it.
Well, Jean Rouche was pretty good at doing that duck walk slowly and moving from one place to another. I don't know if I did it like him or John Marshall, but I paid attention to how to do it, for myself, how to do it. In fact, I don't think that much about technique. I mean, it's important to know your tools so that you're not thinking, oh, what f-stop should I use? Okay, I'm shooting, let's go. But then it's all interacting through the camera, following a person in the right way. It's a very sensual feeling. I mean, I know when I've shot a sequence, I just, like in the place for jazz. Who was playing? Was it Archie? No, it wasn't. Someone was playing a clarinet, and I moved off the clarinet across the drums to the bass, and then it actually got that shot got Richard Broadman a grant.
Nice.
Yeah. But that was a situation where the jazz club has a stage raised about 1.5 feet off the bar floor, and there are mic stands and a piano and a drum kit and all. And they said I could do anything I want. So I was looking at it, and I got up and got behind the flute, and then around the corner a little bit, and then I could see the drummer, and I was just doing these little, I couldn't look at where my feet were going, so my foot would be going, trying to avoid a mic stand, and so it was so much fun, to do it. I mean, it's like tightrope walking or something. Can I get away with it this time?
That's beautiful. I love A Place for Jazz. It's such an amazing jazz documentary. I took a lot of pride in showing it at Sponto Gallery in Venice Beach, where the Beats were born. Mm-hmm. Where Lord Buckley performed.
Lord Buckley.
Yeah, Lord Buckley performed there. Yeah, Art Pepper played there, Azar Lawrence. Mm-hmm. So onward and upward, John. Next question: is perception reality?
Well, it's sort of like the Webb telescope. They brought something back, but it's so far away. I don't know if it's really. I'm now perceiving things that I can't. No, that's not. Is perception real? Well, as long as you're not on acid or something, yes.
No, I love that Webb telescope. You're looking through a Webb telescope on acid. Well, there's that McLuhan poem. He said, Marshall McLuhan put a telescope to his ear and said, "What smell do I smell?"
Okay.
Okay, so John, tell me one major element of your career, your creativity for many decades, being a poet and a filmmaker and an anthropologist and everything you are, a writer. One major element that stayed the same and one major element that's changed.
I realized when I was trying to write fiction that it wasn't interesting for me to write fiction, and that most of what I do is reality based. So that's one, and that's gone all the way through. What's the other one's one that I have
The
had?
reality base is what has stayed the same. What's changed over the years?
Well, the tools have changed. That's been a huge difference, um, and I've gotten older and more established, so I can get more places, and I don't have to look. I don't have to go hunting for a subject and then hunting for money for it, and
Right.
all that kind of stuff. So that's something that changed.
That's good. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness.
Mhm.
Tell me a weakness you've turned into a strength.
Hmm. I was shy for quite a while. I would never I would never talk until I was in a room where I was comfortable with the people. I mean, what did I didn't have to know them, but I wouldn't walk into class on day one and talk to everybody. Um, and
And that turned into what kind of strength? How did you flip it into a strength?
oh no, I say hello to people on the street, and if I walk in, I see some. I don't want to just stand there, so I walk up to someone, and I can also move out of it if it's not like,
Yeah.
um, I mean, the development of social skills, I think it's a huge area of what, I mean, I couldn't speak in front, I don't think in college I ever spoke in class. And then I was teaching, and, I'd always have some notes. I knew what I wanted to say, basically. But it's a kind of a performance. You have to give them some enthusiasm, so I
You
did.
you learned on the job. You didn't go to a class that taught you how to be a professor and perform. You learned by doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
um, I did one class. Most of them I didn't care, about. This one, I wish it had been videotaped. You know the movie Blue Crush? It's a
No.
surfing movie, where, but it's an interesting movie. It's a beautiful girl, and has a lot of difficulties. She needs to get on the bonsai pipeline and get her career started as a surf model or something. And I really like the film, and it, as a script structure, it's just textbook. She has the ghost that's haunting her. She has the absent parents and her responsibility for her daughter. All these vectors that just make a good script. And I wanted to talk about story structure, and I started talking about it, and I realized that I wasn't getting through. So I got a little more outrageous and theatrical about it. And it turned out to be a good exegesis on film structure. just because I didn't want to fail.
I mean, you wanted to succeed in communicating to your students.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a line that goes, you create what you resist. Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into you are what you hate. James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. And Louis Buñuel nailed it. Thank God I'm an atheist. So this line about, I'm not saying you, John, but just this line in general in the creative process, you create what you resist. Any thoughts on that?
I don't know. I don't characterize it that way. Because I do write about things that I don't like and resistant to it. And I don't know quite how to answer that question.
Yeah. Well, fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion when
you're bigger than the other guy.
John, you have a good sense of humor. What's the most significant difference between women and men, physical aside?
How much time do we have? We're almost different species, I think.
Really? Wow.
Not quite that extensive, but I think it's all not all men are one way and not all women are one way. So there's what was Leopold Bloom, yes, in Ulysses, he was in the trial in the Nightmare, and Buck Mulligan says, "Your Honor, we have before you a finished example of the new womanly man," which I've often thought that there is a nice continuum of gender roles. I sometimes refer to myself as a finished example of the new womanly man.
That's good. What caused matriarchy?
Well, when the guys are all out hunting, you've got someone else has to take up all the slack. So, and I don't know. I know there's an awful lot of historical and anthropological study on these things, but I don't have any insight into why we have the society that we have. Men going out hunting every now and again doesn't really make them that superior.
Yeah.
And
John, can you forget to die?
I hope so. No, I am resigned to the fact that I will go out of existence. No 40 days in David Chon looking, in the Bardo looking for David Chon for my next incarnation. It's wonderful. I wish it was true. 40 days to get used to being dead.
Well, we just got about 5 more minutes. This has truly been enlightening. A couple more. How do you find peace of mind?
Wine, come and take me for a ride. Peace of mind. I have to actively not get upset about a lot of stuff. Look at the news. I have no agency. I used to think the Supreme Court was on my side, but times have changed.
If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
People are listening. I told my little brother when he was about 15. I know maybe he's a little. He said, "Hey John, yeah, I'm going to college now." So, I basically asked him if he was having much sex, and he assured me that he was. I said, "Well, what else are you complaining about?"
That's good.
Yeah.
John, these are 5 quick Alan Watts questions just off the top of your head in just a word or two. Who started it all?
The other guy.
Are we going to make it?
Yes, not personally, but yes, the human species will go on for a long, long time.
Where do we put it?
Well, it depends on your tastes.
Who's cleaning it up?
That's always a big bone of contention. I end up cleaning up a lot of stuff.
Last Alan Watts question, 5th one is it serious?
Personally, I don't think it is. Some good happens, some bad happens. Win some, lose some. You just keep going.
Keep going. That's one of my heroes, Frank Zappa, said, "Don't stop and keep going."
Yeah.
If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Well, I just take one of my vomit-covered hands and wash it off.
Nice. That's practical.
Yeah.
Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
It makes absolutely no difference.
Very good. Should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
It depends. Like in the dark, it's a little easier, I think, to find it if you go underneath, because that way you'll get. Well, like no, that's. No, I think under is a little neater looking, but
Very good.
the things I spend a lot of time thinking about.
If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
I don't know. You know, here. This is my journal.
Yeah, that's it. How about that's a good title, John. This is my journal.
Yeah.
So they want to publish your autobiography and they want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell would it be?
Well, rabbit glue, I hope.
Nice. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
There's some really nice statues. It's like made of rebar or something, but it's very realistic and it's huge, and they show up at Burning Man.
I like that.
I only went once, but I had to.
I like that. Have you been to Burning Man?
Yeah, one time.
Wow, I'm jealous. Wow, very good. Tell me something good you never had, but you never want.
Well, a Jaguar XKE.
Dude, you answered it well. I've got 3 more questions and we're out of here. Thanks again, John. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Although it can be kind of irritating at times, I think the whole gender rethinking of gender and
Yeah.
sexualities is an important thing that's happening today.
Yeah. Someone told me just recently the American Indians indigenous had 7 genders. And I looked it up on Wikipedia and it says they had 5 genders. I was like, wow.
Right.
I like to know these things. I didn't know that.
Well, Scientific American had a double page chart with all the possibilities. There's something like 67 things you could be.
There you go.
You know, based on all.
Thornton Wilder said in 1928, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for over 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. John, what's it really all about for you?
I never thought it would be. I mean, I grew up thinking I was going to be a beat poet or something, and an adventurous type person, and I did have an adventurous life, and getting my children, just absolutely, it was a seismic shift in my worldview, and then I have grandchildren too. I've taken both of my granddaughters to Paris because I felt that was a moral obligation.
Beautiful. The last question, John, is what gives you the most optimism?
In 2022?
Wait, John, you win. You answered a question with a question. It's amazing because you have that Irish blood. They go to the Irishman, they go, hey, you Irish people answer a question with a question. And the Irishman goes, we do, eh?
Yeah. There's when I was filming Ted Carpenter, he said, he was talking about McLuhan, and he said, I had never heard anyone like him. There's the puns and the jokes and the laughter and all this. And he was my friend Jenny Cool, who's a filmmaker and Irish. So he said, you mean Ted's never met an Irishman?
Well, that's funny because you brought up Joyce. I was really impressed, and Ulysses, and McLuhan really nailed Joyce when he said, James Joyce uses the pun as a way of seeing the paradoxical exuberance of being through language.
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
Well,
John,
it's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's really been a pleasure. Thank you for all your Ted Carpenter films, all your writing, all your jazz films. I'm going to hit the end button, but I hope this never ends. We can continue the discussion forever and ever.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, John.